introduce the topic and I will lead with the first comment.
All right, sounds good to me. Okay, so welcome everybody. We are live again, and today, well, during the last month, we've had another interest rate increase, which means that most people have less money in their pockets. And they're talking about having another increase in interest rates again next month. So for a lot of people, those that were within their budget are finding that they're probably overspending. So what we're going to have a discussion about today is, are you overspending? If you are overspending, what can we do in order to try and rein that in so that, well, we don't go bankrupt? And we've got Brendan, Sally, Adrian, and Alison might join us later, but welcome everybody.
Hiya.
Hi, everyone.
Thank you for having us.
You're welcome. Now, Adrian's been missing for a while, so we're going to start off with Adrian. Take it away, Adrian.
Thank you very much, Paul. It's great to be back. I'll put the microphone where it should be. Just before I went away, I saw someone actually do a very short webinar, very short. Actually, it was probably just a TikTok, but it's someone I know who was discussing this very topic as a business person, small business person. What can we do to reduce our spending? And one of the things he did is, started canceling subscriptions. And the most alarming thing that he showed up for everyone to see in that video was he had personalized number plates with the company name of a company he doesn't even have registered anymore. It was a dear company to him, but that was $500 a year. We're not talking about personalized with his name. It was the initials of his company that was actually, the name was initials. But the fact is, he just did that because he's always had them. But that was $500 a year he could eliminate immediately. Now you think about where we are in life now, where they're teaching everybody, you think about Big Brother and the New World Order. We are not going to own anything and we are going to be happy. Have you all heard that? We are all not going to own anything, but we're going to be happy about that.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the reality is, it is very hard to purchase something outright. Our lives are pretty much run by subscriptions, which is great passive income for the people collecting the subscriptions, but it's not much good for any of us because we don't ever get ownership of that. They retain a lot of the intellectual property in their terms and conditions of what you create in there. So you really, and then if you go to own something, if you're talking about digital property that you're creating, if you want to make that bespoke and owned by you, that starts costing a bomb. Now, think about other things other than digital products and digital product property that you're creating. People don't own their own mowers. They hire someone to come and mow their lawn. They don't have a bathtub in their backyard to wash their dog. They bring someone to come and do that. These are de facto subscription services that you maybe use on a monthly basis, but still works like a subscription. You're renting. So anyway, that's the two extremes. There's you can reduce your subscriptions, certainly for stuff that you're not using, that will save you money. And you might have to dig a little bit deep to find those ones that are costing you more than you realize and aren't warranted by the amount of use you give them or don't give them. And then the other end of the equation, essential services we don't own, but we rent or subscribe to, like mowing our lawns, washing our dogs, taking care of our kids, things like that. I'll be that guy sitting with the card table on Miami Beach, change my mind.
Well, I know that Sally has brought this up in the past about having a look at her subscriptions, and here's some that you've done that yourself, Sally, and you
totally.
had a whole load of things that you were paying for that you weren't using anymore.
Yeah, and I think it's really important to often do a bit of a cleanup in your backyard, and also, live within your budget. Spend what you've got. If you haven't got it, don't spend it. I only live with a debit card. And a lot of my friends are the same way. So if you don't have it, you can't do it. Afterpay is a really big killer that gets you up the butt. We're coming into Christmas, and all these, falsehoods about pay nothing and get it interest free. So many of them have it, Harvey Norman, all that sort of stuff, and you're looking at the ticket item. I did Afterpay once just to try it out. It was the biggest pain in my ass because money kept coming out that I'd forgotten about. It was like over 4-6 months or something, and it's like this ongoing debt. And I just thought, when you live within your means, live in the moment. If I've got it, I can pay for it. If I don't, doesn't matter, because really it's such a world of excess, and it does piss me off a lot that we're a consumerist sort of a society. And where I live, we've got this great Facebook group called Pay It Forward. And basically people just post photos of shit that they don't want, because one man's shit is another man's shit, right? You put it out on the sidewalk, and just whatever you don't want anymore, come and get it. Someone had a big Coke freezer there. Half of my house is now decorated with Pay It Forward stuff. So rather than buying new stuff, get something that was dearly loved by somebody else, let's not call it shit, just handed down stuff, and then utilize it that way, so that we've got this circular economy. In the fashion industry, I'm really looking at that, because, reducing and reusing what we already have, there's leftover bits or pieces, and recycling garments, that's a really big thing. Taking old people, clothes that are worn out or whatever, and recycling them, putting patches on them, and it's becoming really trendy. I know my kids live out of the salvos, for example. They love it. They have money, they work, they can buy whatever they want, but it's actually trendy, but they also like the sustainability aspect of it all. So my two things are: live within your means, get a debit card, and reuse, recycle, all that sort of stuff. Pay it forward, because it's so much landfill, such a lot of waste, and such, we come into Christmas and it just makes my toes curl about it's just another bloody hallmark moment of like expectations of fitting into society. We do the right thing. Oh my goodness. Don't get me started. Over to you, Brendan.
Yeah, well, I'm gonna kind of straight away jump in and follow that and claim the title of the elder lemon, or the elder statesman of this group, because I've been around longer, a little bit, I think, than everybody. And I've seen the ups and downs. And my number one thing is psychology and the recency bias that people have. So we're all really complacent if things are good. And, because of my accent, I say this, and sometimes I say it with awe and wonder. Fucking Australians don't realize what a good country this is when you compare it to the world. But when things are good for so long, when things are so good for so long, you don't understand that the world changes. And to give two very current examples, an IT specialist in Kiev 2 years ago would never have thought that he or she might be fighting in a war. And they are. Those people are actually could not conceive that. Equally, no matter how difficult the situation is, a bunch of people in Israel could not conceive what has happened in the last couple of months. And that's a big picture way of putting that. Unless we have money in the bank for a rainy day, we're actually not doing ourselves any favors. I have a huge issue with how debt is promoted. Credit card, I 100% agree with you, Sally, on Afterpay. I have a huge issue with the fact that the majority of people are afraid of maths. And all maths is a way to explain the world. And my one simple example that I use, and I learned this in school in our equivalent of year 7 or 8. And we had a very good maths teacher. And he came in one day, and I'll make the long story very short. He said, you're going to buy a car. You're going to pay it off over a month, like Afterpay. You're going to pay me 1 cent today. You're going to double that 1 cent every day for 30 days. Would you buy the car? And of course, a bunch of 13-year-olds all go, yes, we will. that 1 cent doubled for 30 days. And people don't believe me. You got to work this out. Ends up cumulatively of being $10 million. And debt is like that. Compound interest. Einstein said compound interest is the most powerful force in the universe. And what I'm trying to get across to my 18 and 20-year-old at the moment, they're in that critical time, between the ages of about 15, 16 and 30, when everything is kind of created for their future. If they get the habit of putting money aside, gaining skills, and actually really thinking for the future, life is going to be hopefully a doddle. On the other hand, if they're using Afterpay and credit cards and 42 subscriptions for toenail polish or whatever it happens to be, it's going to be a very tough world, especially when the rainy day happens. So debt, maths, rainy day, and actually looking at the fact that the world does change are huge things for me.
So a common theme that keeps coming up is this Afterpay, or get something now and pay it later. And I think Sally mentioned that if you watch television, I think they still have these ads. I'm not sure because I don't watch television. But you got Harvey Norman, they'll say, buy your TV today and pay it in 24 months. So I'm going to go to the chartered accountants amongst us. How does it work, Brendan? How can a company turn around and say, you can have the goods today, you don't have to pay
Interest free.
24 months, interest free, you don't have to pay anything for 24 months. How does that work for them? Because they're obviously making some money there.
I did this job, not for Harvey Norman, and it does go back quite a while, but I worked for IBM back in the 90s, and as the leasing manager for a while for IBM computer equipment in Ireland. And we would sell to major customers. So, the average transaction size was $1 million plus at the time to the major customers. And we give them the technology because that was not hard. IBM was so far ahead of the market at the time. But then the sales guys would actually sit down with the customers and say to them, don't buy this, lease it, absolutely lease it. And we got two enormous advantages from that. And Harvey Norman gets the same two advantages. One is we've got 24, 36 or 60 months to actually tip away and get them to take the next version. So you're really creating a communication channels whereby you don't have them by the short and curlies, but you have them by the short and curlies to a large extent. And the other thing is it's not interest free. They have built the interest cost into the nominal price of the whole thing, and they get tax advantages in terms of how they actually spread the income out over a period of time as well. So it's vastly more lucrative, and I don't have a problem with it from Harvey Norman's point of view. That's good business tactics from their side. But I go back to what I said about not understanding maths. If you walk in the door, and then let's not use Harvey Norman, of Shop ABC Limited, and you see something that looks like it's too good to be true, you're a fucking idiot if you don't understand that there's a catch behind it.
Well, my understanding of this is that they've actually factored into it that 30% of people won't make that payment. And it's those 30% of people that end up covering everybody else. But I might be wrong with
the interest rate is massive. It's the same reason. Yeah, same reason that interest rates on credit cards, or if you don't pay, are not just massive, but the interest rates are way up there. Call it 20%, doesn't matter what it is. But then you've got the other fees that go with it. And when you calculate it, you're talking interest rates of 30, 40, 50, sometimes 100%. So you can afford that 20 or 30% of your customers don't pay.
Yeah, I think that's it as well. So Sally wrote in the thing, if it looks too good to be true, well, it's dodgy.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Much more polite word. Much more polite.
Yeah. I know. It's that old saying, if it looks like shit, smells like shit, well, it is shit because it doesn't sit right? And it's just, you see it all the time and people get sucked in. And this is the time of the year where people get sucked in for a bargain. There's Black Friday specials.
Black Friday.
God. Oh my God. And then Cyber Monday, it's all just marketing ploys and people go, oh, I'm out for a bargain. I know I'm getting sucked in, and I'm just going, hang on, let me work it out. And it's actually, not that good a deal. Some are, but it's still sucking people in, buying stuff that they don't particularly need or possibly can't afford, or both.
Well, how
Because
about
Paul, you've talked about financial education. Like, talk about that on a simple level, because most people hear the word financial and education and get a little bit scared.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't think it's taught at schools well enough. I think the first place to actually start this is to teach our students. And the other thing that I think we need to teach our students is a constitution, but that's another conversation altogether.
But real life stuff, and that's what we keep bringing up every week, because as families, you're the mentors for kids, and it's about real life living and real life circumstances, and teach that at school. It's rather than, everything at school is sort of rote learning rather than experience, right? Getting out there and teaching you the dodgy elements of life, right? Just because it says a bargain doesn't mean that it is. You're saving this much, but the actual price is always just going to be the sale price anyway, often the time. They mark it up. I know in all the online selling, you've got to add 3 times value when you put the actual price down, and this is what you're saving. You're getting 2/3 more for the bottom price. I mean, that's just part of the marketing ploy. So people need to toughen up, or kids need to be taught that from the beginning. Don't trust everything, read the bottom line. Don't just go with what you're told, so to speak. Question everything.
Well, let's take, sorry, I'll get back to you, Adrian, but let's just take this onto a broader scale. When you buy a house, not many people have enough money to actually purchase a house outright, so they actually have to get a loan. And when you actually have a look at how much you actually end up paying in interest, Brendan's probably better than me, but you're paying more than double what the cost of the house is, right?
And depending
Adrian,
on the interest rate, it's typical to pay 3 times in interest what you pay on the principal.
Absolutely, it's crazy. Adrian, what did you want to add?
Oh, so much. So I'll keep it to quotes. Great Australian quote: keep an open mind, but not so open that your brain falls out. That has got to be my all-time favorite quote. But I think if you go back further than that quote I heard it from the guy, never a borrower or lender be is great advice to your inner voice.
Yeah.
And it's amazing how, like, people won't give money to someone on the street. People won't lend their best friend $500 to pay their rent when they're in a tough thing, but they will pay 3 times the value of their house over 30 years religiously. That means we got it all wrong. We've all had friends that have been in a tough point. It is hard for them to ask for money. It's hard for someone to give it to them. But look at how much more people give to blind organizations. And just like Sally was saying, with all these afterpays, look at the banks. It's this group that points out comparing interest rates with banks is a fool's game, because they're all got the same owners. It's just like if you go to Greece and you go to a flower shop on a street, you walk 2 doors down, there's another flower shop, but they all have the same owner. And that's the same in Asia too. That is a retail strategy where you have all the shops that sell the same product on the same street, and consumers think they're comparing prices and getting a better deal from shop 13 than shop 8, but actually they all have a common owner. It's an old game, and the banks think we're idiots. Well, I mean, the majority of the population are idiots.
They are right.
I talked to someone today who's in property, and she said 90% of all millionaires and billionaires is because they're in real estate.
Yeah.
But that, I mean, that is a statistic just pulled out of thin air, in my opinion, because most of those people technically do not own their property. They are highly leveraged, and people know not to approach them because they're cash poor.
So
People say,
do you know who the richest man in Britain is, Adrian, the Duke of Westminster?
I have seen his name
Prince
in a
Charles?
myriad of things.
No. He's not
He's
directly part of the royal family. He's he's an aristocrat. But the reason, and it comes to mind, the reason that he's the richest man in England is because his ancestors were lucky enough to be with William the Conqueror, who actually gave them land in the center of London when it was a bit of a bog. And then as the centuries passed by, the descendants got richer and richer and richer. So now he owns pretty much all the land around Trafalgar Square, the West End, and all of the rest of it. So
and that's
he's not
the city.
cash poor.
That's the city.
But that's the so, and that's why real estate, an awful lot of it is inherited. God, I shouldn't say this, and I'm about to shoot myself in the big toe. Even when you look at someone like Trump, he inherited all of that from his father. Yes, you have the Bill Gateses and those in technology who have been shooting stars, and you've had different technology over the last couple of hundred years, like railways and shipping and all of that. But ultimately, most of those long-term fortunes are put into real estate, and that goes up over time. Now, of course, it dips, you have recessions, you have crashes, but it keeps going up, and it keeps going up because you have more demand than you have supply.
But location is also very important, because I know my wife's, she's from Greece, and her father's got property in Greece. He can't even give it away. Because
But hopefully, your kids or his grandkids, if you look at the long-term view, that they'll do very, very well. And he won't, but one day, with a tiny bit of luck, that will all sort itself out, and that property will still be valuable.
But that's if they sort it out. The problem is, living in Australia, they've got so many laws that you have to do. You have to go back to Greece to look after the property. You're paying taxes, and like, I don't know. I mean, as I say in property, location.
Yeah.
What's your view on this, Sally?
Sorry, I was off the thing. Say that one again about the property thing.
Yeah, so no, Brendan's saying that you can't go wrong with property because
not you can't go wrong, but you're unlikely to go wrong.
You're unlikely. Even though, before I cut in, the house I'm living in, we actually paid less than the previous owners, and we bought it in the rising market. So you can still go wrong if you do it wrong. But I agree with Brendan, if you get the right location. But what's your view, Sally?
Well, I'm actually tending towards how Adrian opened up today. At some stage, the earth is going to be, what we're shifting towards is no ownership. It's all about, and this is really out there energetic. It's not woo-woo, but this is what is actually going to happen down the track, and it won't be that far away. So we can squibble about ownership and having the biggest and best, or, best house on the best corner or whatever. And that's so 3D. When we go 5D, all this sort of stuff will be very, very different conversations. So to be fair, that's where I'm sitting in the bigger term. But as it is, we came onto this planet to exist as earthly people on this planet at the moment, and this is what we have to navigate, taxes and real life stuff. But at some stage we will be shifting towards this lack of ownership, because we'll just be a collective. So that's putting it way out there. What do you think about that, Adrian?
That's the great divide, isn't it? The ignorant and the enlightened. And sadly, the enlightened tend to lose to the ignorant, and the a-holes that lead the ignorant, in many cases in history and countries. And we don't own anything.
Yep.
Really. And I said this in a blog post, oh, well, at least 6 years ago. You know, World War III is about water and Wi-Fi and who controls it. You look at places like Singapore that get their water from Malaysia. They keep very good diplomatic relations with Malaysia to not push them into a corner where they'll cut the water off from Singapore. You look at what Israel's doing to Gaza in switching the water off, and look at what China's done it in other places, like Tibet and stuff, threaten them to cut the water off. African military regimes do it, and poisoning water in Eastern Europe. And I think, you know, water and Wi-Fi, we're screwed if we don't have either of those. Those are the essential elements. Forget about earth, air and everything. People, it's not worth living if you don't have water and Wi-Fi.
Can I just add that, you know, a bit about the ownership, and we brought this up a couple of weeks ago. I'd just been in Darwin and spent a lot of time with Aboriginal people, and, you know, the Aboriginals, based on this philosophy that there is no ownership. You know, we're all sort of guests on this land, on this planet, which is, at the end of the day, is true. We're only here for a small amount, a small blimp in the bigger picture, right? And so when we get caught in this earthly fucking, I don't know, what do I call it? There's some word anyway, but in this earthly construct, right? It's all about ownership. And it's just about us, I don't know, being grateful that we're here and sharing what we have here. And yes, we can talk for days about how we're stuffing it up. We're, you know, building on areas that would keep us self-sufficient and all that sort of stuff. So I don't know, what are your thoughts, Brendan and Paul, on, you know, just the big picture?
When, you know, I think I love these conversations because there's a lot of sense, there's a lot of goodwill here. But I'm sure you're aware that Argentina has just elected in a landslide a far-right nutter, absolute nutter. One of his election planks was legalizing the sale of human organs, okay? And this goes to your point, Adrian. The ignorant will always win because of the weight of numbers. There is no vaccine for stupidity. There is no vaccine for ignorance, etc. So I'm a lot more pessimistic about moving to a Star Trek Federation type society where things are genuinely shared, where I think, you know, the old 80-20 rule, if you talk to 80% of people around the world, I think we're all willing to share and to contribute and to support the community and be social and all that. But we're not the people who count. When you actually have and ignoring some of the other political figures currently in the world, historically, when you look at your Lenins, your Stalins, your Hitlers, your Maos and the rest of it, it is those driven, horrendous individuals. And you can balance that with your Lincolns and your Roosevelts and various others perhaps, but it is the drive from the top, and then the communication with the masses determines the next steps in society. And I'm not seeing any forward leaps at the moment. If anything, where we were pre-GFC, when the world was looking like a pretty comfortable place, now it's looking pretty chaotic. And it's hard to see how we think our way or humanize our way out of that. And I know this is digressing a little bit, but Paul, you mentioned constitution at the start, and I fully agree that to address the issues of overspending, of what are human rights, you do need to address what should be in a constitution. But you're never going to do that because you have your Rupert Murdochs and the rest of it will fight tooth and nail. You'll have your Dukes of Westminster who want to protect that there's no such thing as land taxes, and you'll have your other billionaires who want no inheritance taxes, and their power is just over. It's not a conspiracy, it's just human nature.
Look, I think if we have a look at the world power, we're coming to an end, but if you have a look at the world power, America, it was started in 1776. It was based on the Constitution at that time, and it made America the greatest power in the world. You're right, the Rupert Murdochs, the rich do find ways of taking away the Constitution or the rights of people. We won't go down that track today, or probably not at all, because there's a lot of controversy around that. Another, just for me, just in finishing, we brought up the universal wage, or everybody getting paid the same thing and not owning anything. And one of the books that I've just listened to is Elon Musk. And we all know that Elon Musk is making great advances in robotics. Now, we know he's got Tesla, we know he's got SpaceX. But the other area that he's making great advances is in robotics. And soon robots are going to be able to do what humans do. And that's when in the book, that's when they actually suggested that there's going to be a universal wage. With that, thank you guys for a great discussion today. Fantastic.
That could be next week's discussion. Because
Yeah,
I just
that's-
heard,
Yeah,
Elon Musk
universal-based
has
income.
also
Yeah,
he's also said, because of AI and what Microsoft's done with OpenAI, that basically no job will be necessary for a
That's
human.
right. All right, well, that's all
and
we'll
then you
talk
have
about
to
next
ask,
week.
why does he say that? But let's talk about that next week.
That's
All
right.
right,
And
that's
they
the
also
topic
say
for
maybe
next
his
week.
job is not necessary too.
Well, his job is to send people to Mars. So I don't know if AI can do that yet. So, and he's got to make the decisions. Anyhow,
Just
it'll be a fantastic discussion next week. Thanks, guys.
But while you're still recording and streaming, I just want to say how great it is to be back with all of you. It's really actually been a high point of my day. I can honestly say that.
And it's a
Fantastic.
high point having you as well, Adrian.
Thank you.
Yeah,
See you. I want to
everybody
talk to
contributes something.
Paul after this.
Okay.
Cheers, guys.
See you guys.